You're listening to The Real Estate Show with your real estate and mortgaging team, Terry Kilakos and Merav Marciano on CJAD 800.
Good afternoon, everyone. You're listening to The Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Terry Kilakos, chartered real estate and mortgage broker, president of Northeast Real Estate and Mortgage Agency, as well as Coldwell Banker Commercial Alliance. Man, that's a mouthful, honestly. I need to trim things down a little bit, Merav. Today, we're going to be talking about how to start investing in real estate. If you're interested in becoming a real estate investor, you won't want to miss today's show. And if you do happen to miss today's show, you're not going to be hearing me say this, but you could actually subscribe to our YouTube channel, newsonthego.ca, where you're actually going to hear and listen to this, the show that we're actually having today. Joining me, that beautiful laugh that you heard 2 seconds ago, we have my co-host, Merav Marciano, chartered real estate and mortgage broker and vice president extraordinaire of Northeast and CBC Alliance. You see how much easier that is? Vice President, Northeast purpose. And CBC Alliance. What for? All the bells, the whistles, the tra-la-las and all that.
Tra-la-las.
I don't need that.
And by the way, you mentioned our YouTube channel, but you're forgetting about our Spotify channel.
Yeah.
And our iTunes channel.
Yeah.
So we're literally, for those of you who are more Spotify fans and like to listen to the show in the car or anything like that, I know a lot of realtors have actually reached out to me and said that they regularly listen to our show on Spotify. So just type The Real Estate Show and you'll find us under Terry's profile.
Okay, and just FYI, for anyone that actually does go on Spotify and finds my profile, you will also find my playlists that I have. And it's a series of jams. So I have driving jams, I have party jams, I have Greek jams, and there's a couple of other ones which are fun. So I'll spare you guys what they are on the air, but you guys can actually go on and you'll see them. I've had a couple of clients be like, "You have interest, in quite an eclectic taste in music." Anyways. Feel free to reach us online at nordest.ca as well. You could also visit our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Northeast Nordest, or our Facebook page, which is at CBC Alliance Quebec. And again, don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel, newsonthego.ca. So Merav, let's kick off today's show. My all-time favorite subject, real estate investing.
Investing in real estate.
Yeah. Guys, I am here today, talking to you because many moons ago, October of 2000, I made the decision to become a real estate investor. And thanks to that one decision, we're here today. So investing in real estate is a great way to build up your net worth and create cash flow, obviously. I started investing when I was 24 years old, right? Was I 24, 23?
24.
Yeah, and my philosophy always was... Well, actually, hold on. People have heard my philosophy always. I'm curious about your philosophy. What did you grow up hearing about real estate?
Oh, my family was not in real estate at all. We were renters up until my late teenage years. So definitely my whole life, all I've seen is... apartments, rental units. So we've never talked about investing in real estate. We've never talked about owning real estate. So it wasn't at all a subject I had any information about as a young adult. And that's it. Once I became an adult, continued renting, didn't understand at all the concept of buying, until I met you. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, there's something to this.
Your whole life changed.
Your
whole perspective changed.
There. No, it's true. My whole life did change, Terry.
Yeah.
It did, for the good.
Patting myself on the back there. Okay.
It did. And besides, obviously, finding my soulmate, I learned a lot about the benefits of investing in real estate and understood almost like the trick to going to the next level in life. It was very interesting.
So my upbringing was a little bit different. My parents owned their triplex that they lived in. And I grew up with the philosophy of, and this was coming from my mother, not so much even from my father or anyone else. I've always said, for those of you who know Richard, I keep saying Richard Kiyosaki this week. I don't know what's up with me. Anyways, Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, who I consider to be one of my mentors, he had two fathers. He had his rich dad, he had his poor dad. And my upbringing was very similar to yours, with the exception that my family actually owned the triplex that we lived in. And I was always told by my parents, that I should have a stable job, get a government job. I was always pointed in a direction where I needed to have stability. And the one thing that my mother always instilled on me from a young age, she said, never buy a single family house or a condo until you have enough rents coming in from tenants to pay for that single family house. So my mother always had that philosophy. My father, my grandparents never really had that. They just enjoyed the fact that there was tenants. But that was the philosophy that my mother instilled in me.
Spartan mother.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly. Now, I also had what I consider to be my rich dad, which was, it happened to be the father of a friend of mine's, and a friend of mine's, is that even proper? Anyways, no. You guys understand what I'm saying. Friend of mine. Anyways, I feel like the Goodfellas here or something. So,
friend of mine, friend of ours.
So he was the father of a friend of mine. Okay. And, I spent a lot of time with this man, and he was a very successful businessman. And he taught me how to fly. I flew a plane at a very young age, thanks to him. And he introduced me to a different world, a world where you made money not by exchanging your time for money, but instead building businesses and investing. And there was an interesting character in my young years that I met through him, who was, anyways, long story short, he had bubblegum empire. He used to sell...
Well, the bubblegum machines.
Bubblegum machines, yeah. Exactly. And I'll never forget, we were driving in a car together, and we were going to upstate New York, where he had his place, and he looks back at me and he says, Terry, and I must have been maybe 16, 17 years old at that time, and these guys were, late 40s, early 50s, and he looks back at me and he says, Terry, there's two things that you need to have and get in your life when you're young. And don't shake your head. Merav is shaking her head because she knows what I'm about to say. He says to me, you need to buy a lot of real estate, and you need to have a lot of sex, because you can't have either of them when you get older. So I thought it was kind of funny. And, but I said, you know what? I'm going to do that. So it was always my goal to buy real estate. So while my sisters at 19 years old moved out of my parents' house and decided to go and rent properties, I decided to stay home with my parents and my grandparents. I worked, I saved my money, and I ended up moving out of my parents' house when I was 24 years old into a fourplex that I acquired.
In Hochelaga Maisonneuve.
Exactly.
Now, my question to you, why did you choose that neighborhood? It was really not a desirable neighborhood 20 plus years ago.
Yeah. So if you ever watch the Netflix here, I think it's Netflix, Bad Bloods or anything like that, you'll understand, Hochelaga was not a very good neighborhood. I always make the joke, I had like bikers on one side and a crack house on the other. And my building was right smack in the middle. I paid $107,000 for it when I picked it up for a fourplex. Neighborhoods in Montreal had already gone up. So, I grew up in my land. That neighborhood was expensive. Plateau was starting to get expensive. Outremont, TMR, all those neighborhoods, anything around me was already up. The next logical choice would have been for me to go out. Hochelaga was the next place. What did I do? I picked up the phone and I started calling Access Montreal, and I found out which areas had subventions. And by finding out which areas had subventions, I knew which neighborhood was actually going to be the next one to be gentrified. And it happened to be Hochelaga. And when I bought over there, it took many years for me to actually start to see kind of like the real gentrification occur. But now, so many years later, I mean, the property is...
Hochelaga is considered a good neighborhood to live in. A lot of families live there.
Absolutely. I would probably say it's worth 10 times what I had paid for it.
Wow.
And that's the mistake that a lot of real estate investors make. They're going to want to move into an area, or they're going to want to buy into an area that they would want to live in.
Yeah.
When you're a real estate investor, you can't think like that. You have to go where the money is. And that's where the money was for me.
Yeah. So had you bought a fourplex in, let's say, Outremont, you wouldn't be cash flowing. And you always say you have to go into it winning, You have to win. So you can't be cash flow negative.
Exactly. So you have to, the best advice that I can give anyone that wants to get into a real estate transaction, you have to see the win. And this is my mentor, Robert Kiyosaki, who, had said it. If you don't see the win going into a transaction, don't do it. Mm-hmm. You have to see the potential. It has to be there.
Within how long? If I buy something, so you say immediately. It has to cash flow immediately.
It's not necessarily it has to cash flow immediately, but the win has to be very evident and very clear. Mm-hmm. So, I give the example because people are saying, well, Terry, you're talking about, 2000. But every day I come across deals where when we do the analysis, we look at it and say, okay, this is an underperforming property. We could do this, this, this. And is there a win at the end? And then we look at it and we say, yes, there is a win. Mm-hmm. The win is clear and you end up going in. Now, you might end up cash flowing in 6 months or a year, but there was another win involved. And I think we're going to look a little bit more into that a little bit later on in the show because it gets very, very interesting when you actually calculate what kind of return, how you can calculate your returns.
You're listening to The Real Estate Show with your real estate and mortgaging team, Terry Kilakos and Merav Marciano on CJAD 800.
You're listening to The Real Estate Show, and today we're talking about investing in real estate. Feel free to visit us online at www.nordest.ca, or you can reach us at the office at 514-680-4674, where Olympia Karalekas is standing by to take your call.
Poor girl.
I had to say that.
It's Sunday. You want her to stand by? Stand
by. She's there.
Aww.
If you call, you'll see. She'll answer.
She might have a family day, a barbecue.
Yeah, Everyone, I do have to say, Olympia was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, and Mary, who's one of the other assistants, replaced her. And I was hearing Mary pick up the phone, and she was going, "No, it's not Olympia. No, it's not Olympia. No, it's not Olympia. No, it's not Olympia." And then she comes to me and she goes, "I just want to let you know." She goes, Olympia is not replaceable in any way, shape, or form.
I swear, we have some clients who come to us just for Olympia.
Yeah, that's right.
She's amazing.
She was like, this is coming from another assistant in the office, and she's like, she is not replaceable. I was like, so should I give her like a $20, per year raise here?
Per year.
Okay. So let's continue our discussion now about investing. Okay. Yeah. So what's the key thing? What do we look at, right, when we're investing in a property?
Well, the yield or the return on investment, how much money came out of our pocket, and what are we getting in return for that money?
Okay, so let's go to the example of when I acquired that building in Hochelaga. Okay, so if I look back in 1990, and I apologize because I used that one as an example just because it was my first one, and I think that it's important. So let's look at what the market in Hochelaga was in 1999. Those buildings were selling for anywhere between $60,000 to $70,000. Maybe you'd be able to find something at 70, 80. But for the most part, they were selling at that point. All of a sudden, the year 2000 rolls around. There's all these subventions, things like that going into the area. And the buildings go up in value and they pass 100,000. So all of a sudden, these buildings are like at 105, 110.
Everybody's excited and they sell.
Yeah. So everyone is like, we've doubled. It's double what it was. It's gone up by like 100%. We're selling. So there was like for sale signs everywhere in the area. And here comes this Greek kid from the Myland area who truthfully
From the hood.
yeah, not Greek hood.
The hood. Back in the day, my land was.
It was not the
what
hood. You're from Côte Saint Luc. You think that everything outside of Côte Saint Luc is the hood, okay?
That's true.
My land was
I've
not.
never been to my land.
Yeah, my land was not the hood, okay? It was actually a very nice kind of poshy area.
The hood.
It was not the hood. Anyways, okay, so here it comes. I went into the hood, okay?
Yes,
like,
in
honestly.
Montreal, yeah, that's
okay,
true.
so I end up going in there, and everyone made fun of me. Everyone made fun of me. Everyone was like, "You're crazy. You're buying this property. It's you're gonna lose money," including the neighbors. They were like, "Last year you could have bought this for $60,000. You've overpaid." Okay, what was my calculation? What did I look at? Was I looking at what the value of the building is versus what the value was? No. I didn't care about that. The only thing that I cared about at that moment was how much money came out of my pocket. And this is the mistake that a lot of people make. When they acquire a property, they're going to say, I spent $100,000 on that property. No, you didn't spend $100,000. What came out of your pocket was $25,000. That's what you spent on it. The rest, the bank spent on it for you, right? So what came out of my pocket, including my notary fees and all that good stuff, was $27,500. My rental profits for the year on that building were $15,000. Just shy of 15, but let's keep the math simple.
Rental
50.
revenues or rental profits?
Profits. My profits were $15,000.
Okay.
So do the math.
Yes.
Where are you going to, let's for simplicity's sake say that with some renovations that I did, everything, I dropped $30,000 on that acquisition. My rental revenues were $15,000. My rental profits were $15,000. Okay? What's the return on investment? Simple math.
Yeah, 50%.
50%. I'm sorry, there is no investment on this planet that'll yield you 50% return per year.
But I can already hear the voices, people in the car yelling at the radio, but Terry, this is not 2000.
Follow me here, okay?
Okay.
Let's say that building dropped in value. Let's say it would have gone back down to $60,000. Does my rental revenue change?
No.
Because the tenants still have to live there. They were there before I bought the building. They were there. Even if the value had gone up, gone down, the tenants were still there, which means that the rents coming in were still there. So that was my win. That was a very, very clear win for me.
So those numbers didn't change. How much you put out of your pocket and how much revenues you were getting did not change, even if the value of the property goes up, down, sideways. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Your
It didn't
return
matter.
is the same.
Because the return was there, right? Within 2 years, I made back every penny that I had put into the building, right?
Yeah.
So now what's my investment? Zero,
Yeah.
right? Because I've made back that money. Mind you, back then, I thought that $15,000 a year was all the money in the world, and I decided to retire. But that's a whole other conversation.
24 years old.
I was like, that's it.
I'm retired. I'm making a fortune.
It was a lot of money at
I
the
know,
time,
I
you know.
know.
It was a decent income. It was enough. I had a very simple lifestyle. I didn't have a family. I just needed some money to, go out on a couple of dates here and there. And that's it. Okay. So why do I bring this up? That's why the win is so important. And for those of you that are listening to this and you're burning, there's steam coming out of your ears because you're like, Terry, you're talking about, 20 years ago. You could do the same thing today, but you have to be smart about the way that you look at things, right? So let's look at the different ways that you can actually earn money, right, Merav? So what are they?
Well,
and we always talk about four.
Yeah, we talked about cash flow just now. So
Yep.
that $15,000 a year, that's your cash flow. So cash flow positive is obviously what you're aiming for
Yep.
when you're buying a real estate.
Yep.
There are cases where it's okay to be negative if it's a very temporary situation. There's a couple of vacant units
Sure.
you plan on renting out, but really it's cash flow. Then we've got the value of the property going up.
Yeah.
The value of the
Passively.
the market changed, the neighborhood changed. You didn't do anything. You've held onto it, and the value of your property went up. And why is that important? Because obviously, if you want to So obviously for the cash flow purposes, it doesn't change, but for refinancing, getting some equity out, and using that money on another investment, that's where you're going to profit from that.
Yep, absolutely.
Then the other way is you can actively appreciate the property. You
Okay.
can go in there and you can say, I'm going to renovate this place. I'm going to fix it up. I'm going to make it nice. I'm going to fix the landscaping, whatever it is you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to that, I'm going to actively appreciate this property. And also by increasing the rents if you're renovating the
Yeah,
units.
especially if it's a larger type of
Yeah.
a building where the value of the property is not based on market, but now it's based on economic value. Raising the interest rate, raising the rents on it,
Yep.
you're going to end up actually having more value on that building.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Terry. Under 5 units, we do comparables. It's basically what did your neighbor sell for? Over 5 units, it's how much rent is coming in, and it's an economic value. So it's more, your building is looked at more like a business.
Exactly.
So if you have a 30-unit building, how much rents are coming in, and then they use this calculation called a cap rate, and then they calculate the value of that property. Now, the more you increase the rents and reduce your expenses, the more that building
Value.
is worth.
Yeah.
So definitely renovating and doing things to actively appreciate the property will work. And then the last one that you love, the principal recapture.
I'm getting cold.
Brr.
Sorry.
I'm going to let you say that one.
Well, the last one would be the principal recapture, right? So what does that mean? And, I made the joke about BRRR, okay? So the method is you buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Okay.
BRRR.
Exactly. So when you go in and so let's say that property that I had acquired, and I go back to it, a few years after I owned it, I went in, I refinanced it, I grabbed equity out of that property, and I used that equity to acquire other properties. Now, all of a sudden, what did I just do? The down payment that I had originally put back, I've recaptured it. There's a principal amount that's been recaptured. So, and that with that, you can actually really, really grow
your real estate portfolio, yeah.
100%. When we come back, we're going to be taking a look at how to buy real estate with zero down.
You're listening to The Real Estate Show with your real estate and mortgaging team, Terry Kilakos and Merav Marciano on CJAD 800.
You're listening to The Real Estate Show, and today we're talking about how to start investing in real estate. Feel free to call us at the office at 514-680-4674, or you could visit us online at www.nordest.ca. So before we went off to CTV News, we were actually talking a little bit about the BRRRR method, right?
BRRRR.
Which actually is going to transition me into what I want to talk about now, which is buying properties with zero down.
Does that really exist, Terry?
No.
And the show's over.
Okay, all right. So does it really exist? So what does it mean to put a down payment, right? Theoretically, if I go out and I buy a condo and I have $20,000 sitting in my bank account, and I take that $20,000 out of my bank account and I use it as a down payment, that's the down payment, right? Buying a $400,000 condo, I put $20,000 down, that's 5%. Mm-hmm. Okay? I've put 5% down payment. There is ways, as we talked about, using that principal recapture, where you're going to refinance your property, an existing property, grab equity out of it. And when you grab that equity out of it, you use that to acquire something else. Now, how much came out of your bank account?
Zero.
So theoretically, that second property that you just acquired is 100% financed, except the financing is spread across 2 different properties.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's well explained.
There is a couple of other things that you can do. There's, you can get cash backs from certain banks, although there's still certain amounts of down payments that you can get. And the government has put very strict rules with respect to that. You can also use money from lines of credit, credit cards, so on and so forth.
So that's a borrowed down payment.
Borrow down payment.
As long as the ratios work, that's allowed.
Exactly. So, for example, if I take $20,000 out of my credit card, I have to calculate a 5% payment on that $20,000 $20,000 that I took out. As long as that works, we're golden. We're good
So
to go.
if somebody, for example, has a personal line of credit and they want to use what's available on it, and of course they have to go to a bank that allows
it because it's not everyone that is going to allow it.
So obviously when you're using a broker, they're going to tell you this bank you can do that bank you cannot. You take it out of your line of credit.
Yep.
You use it as a down payment. The ratios work. Let's say your indebtment ratios are okay. Everything gets approved. So technically, like you say, you used zero out of your pocket. It's all financed. Yes, it's financed across a mortgage and a personal line of credit, but it's all leveraged. It's all
exactly the whole
money
building
that was borrowed.
Exactly. So now, in a situation like that, let's say you're making $1,000 a year profit on that building. How much have you put down versus how much you're making? What is your return on that investment?
I can answer that. I studied engineering.
Go for it. What is your return on that?
It's infinite.
It's infinite.
Because it's zero down.
Exactly. So you've acquired that property with no money out of your pocket. So your rate of return on it is infinite.
Yeah.
There is no calculation.
Yeah, everybody remembers as a kid you learn anything divided by zero is infinity.
Yeah.
So zero down.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You didn't know?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't study. Yeah.
I didn't study at all in school. So if you take, like you say, $1,000 positive cash flow per year divided by zero out of your pocket times 100, if you want to calculate the percentage, it's infinity.
Yeah. Exactly.
Zero came out of your pocket.
Yeah. So besides that, you also have the ability, there's certain financial institutions which will allow you to do what's called a cross-collateralization across different properties, right? So you have a property A, which is worth, $1 million. It's got a mortgage on it of $400,000. You need to borrow $100,000 to get the down payment for the next one. There is institutions, and we have access to them, where we're able to cross-collateralize across the two properties.
So just so we can be clear, cross-collateralize, basically it's you don't have the 100,000, but you have it as equity in another property.
Exactly.
You don't plan on refinancing, but what you are doing is you're adding that lien onto the property to have access to that 100,000. And some banks will put a mortgage across both properties, and some will just have like a lien onto your property.
Yep.
So that's a way to do it also with no money down. And on the commercial side, honestly, Terry, I've seen a lot of interesting, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say creative or zero down or 100% finance, but I've seen some pretty creative structures where if it's owner occupied, they'll allow for certain things, whether it is zero down. They'll do balances of sale. So, you can get a part of your down payment or all of your down payment financed by the existing owners. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And, when we think of real estate investment, a lot of us just think about buying residential, but we have to think a bit further out. There's so many different types of properties that we can buy, and we'll look at that later on.
Yeah. For me personally, I've always, early on in my life, I always focused on smaller types of properties, triplexes, fourplexes, duplexes, chalets. This is what I was comfortable with. And the biggest mistake that I've made as a real estate investor, and I always tell people, learn from me, because I've made a lot of mistakes over the years, is that I didn't go bigger sooner. And I tell people that because I realized something in the last couple of years, literally, guys, in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years of my life, I realized that I could have gone huge at a certain point in my life, but I didn't. And I regret, although, regret is not a word that I really like to use in my vocabulary, but I do have certain regrets with respect to real estate. I should have gone bigger sooner. Mm-hmm. That would probably be my biggest regret. So don't have the same regrets that I have in the future. I promise you that no matter how the market is today, when you look at it, and, people say that we're in a bubble and it's inflated and it's this and it's that, I could guarantee you 20 years from now, you're going to look back at today and you're going to say, man, I should have bought. Look at what's happening in the market.
That's true.
My good friend Ofer always said, I have to say this. He said, when you buy real estate, I have a lot of real estate investor friends, but anyways, when you buy real estate, it's like getting a haircut. You can have a bad haircut, you can have a good haircut, but a bad haircut will eventually grow out, and it's the same thing with real estate.
It'll always go up.
I don't want to say
no, but I mean it'll go through ups and downs. But in 20 years, yes, in 20 years, I don't see it go down in 20 years.
So let's look at some of the challenges, because I just painted unless you're in like, I don't know, Beirut or something, and God forbid there's some sort of natural catastrophe that happens. Let's talk about some of the challenges, because we've painted a really rosy picture about being a real estate investor, and let's go through some of the challenges of owning real estate.
Yeah, and we've been through a lot of these.
We've been victims to all of them.
All of them. So basically, you have to keep a buffer, a contingency fund in case. I don't like to call it a rainy day fund, but a contingency fund.
I never kept a contingency fund. My contingency fund it was my credit card. Anyway, sorry.
The roof needs to be done. What do I do? It's important. It's not just for emergencies, but also for vacancies. When you have a month or 2 months when there's a vacant apartment, it hurts your pocket. So you do have to have a little bit of a buffer to cover your mortgage and etc. We've seen damage caused by tenants. That's a big one. I don't know if you want to go into some of the horrors we've seen.
You know what? I that's a whole show in itself. Okay, so I'm going to spare our listeners the horrors of, some of the horrific stuff that I've seen in apartments. But I will say this. Before a tenant goes into an apartment, what you need to do is you need to go in, take pictures, and have the tenant actually sign a document that says that they're receiving this apartment in good state and everything is perfect. And any damage that's caused to the apartment is at the responsibility of the tenant. And as long as you have that document, you're laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, you at least have legal recourse.
Exactly. You have to make sure that vacancy between tenants is you have enough funds available to be able to cover that. That's a big one. And that's something that a lot of people don't take into account when they become landlords. And then suddenly they have a vacancy and they're like, oh my God, I'm hemorrhaging money. So you have to be very, very careful with respect to things like that. Up next, we're going to be having a look at different real estate vehicles to invest in.
The Real Estate Show is brought to you by Northeast Real Estate and Mortgage Agency.
Thanks for tuning in. Today's discussion is about investing in real estate. You're listening to The Real Estate Show on CJAD 800. So before we went off to traffic, Merav, we were talking about, the bad stuff about real estate.
Yeah.
So let's look at some of the things that people can do, or what are some of the other vehicles that people can actually invest in, still stay in the real estate world, but doesn't necessarily make them a landlord. What would you say?
Well, let's start with what makes you a landlord, and then we'll go into what doesn't make you a landlord.
Okay, fine. All right.
Okay, fine. So, as a landlord, we can look at residential real estate.
Right, obviously.
So we're talking single-family homes. We could duplex, triplex, fourplex, fiveplex. Then we can go into the commercial world. So it would be more five doors plus. So multi-unit, office space, strip malls, little retail locations, industrial, anything.
I thought you were going to say strip clubs. She said strip malls.
Malls.
Banks do not like to finance strip clubs.
Bars,
just FYI.
Yeah, bars and clubs are difficult to finance. It's not that they don't like, but it's difficult to finance. It's
we'll call it niche financing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, we touched on this one time, but this year we got to experience this. Condo hotels.
Yep.
Condo hotels are interesting. We've seen the hotel industry sort of get hit hard with COVID, and there was opportunities where condos in hotels were being sold, and it's units basically that you rent out, or it's a shared revenue system, and you have access to the unit as well for a certain amount of days per year. We've seen it downtown Le Cristal, Saint-Sulpice, a few hotels I think the Hilton Garden Inn has it as well. So we've seen a few hotels downtown that have it, and we've seen this concept a lot in the States. And I have some friends who own in Myrtle Beach, things like that.
And I think it's great because for an investor that basically wants to do nothing, but they want to own something, that's a good option.
Yeah, it's fully managed for you.
Yeah. So literally all you do is you pay your mortgage and you get your profits every year. And you could find some units that will give you a really good profit. And now actually, real estate investors are looking for places to buy. Those are actually something really interesting to consider and look at. Because like you said, it got hit because of COVID. People want to sell. Now's a good opportunity to possibly look at what you could do with those.
Yeah, but financing is a bit of a difficult thing to do. You have to find the right bank to finance it as 100%, well.
100%. Yeah.
So, again, you have to work with the right team around you. So that's really important to have the right real estate broker, mortgage broker, accountant, attorney, whatever it is that you need. That's really, really important when you become a real estate investor. REITs. I'd like to touch on REITs, real estate investment trusts.
Right. So what would that be like? So that's, I want to buy, I want to get involved in the real estate world, but I don't necessarily want to manage properties. I don't want to own anything for one reason or another. Buy REITs. The same way that you buy a mutual fund, right? The way that you would invest in a mutual fund or anything like that, you could invest in REITs.
So you basically buy units of
exactly,
of a project or of a.
Well, you buy units of the
that
REIT,
exactly,
and then that REIT invests that money into real estate, and then you will collect a revenue from that. So that's something actually really interesting. And you could start off small, or you could go really big with it. So that's a lot of
like
people
investing in the stock market.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can also do private financing for people. Right. So if you have zero interest in owning real estate, but you want to turn a profit on something, become a private lender. You have some money, take that money, lend it out.
That's
right.
True.
You have a line of credit sitting on your house that's worth $500,000, and you have nothing to do with you don't know what to do with the money. Lend it out. You're going to pay 3%. You'll charge 8%. Private lending. It is big business right now. And there's a lot of opportunity for people that are interested in going into that world. But I will say this, and remember these words, right? What do they say? Bears and bulls make money, pigs get slaughtered.
Okay. You're making me hungry. Explain that expression.
Bears and bulls make money, pigs get slaughtered. Okay? So it comes from the years of me working as a stockbroker or as a financial advisor, if you will. But you can have a bear market, you can have a bull market. But when you get greedy, you get killed. And I've seen private lenders where they make money doing what they're doing, and all of a sudden they get very greedy. Where they were charging 8%, all of a sudden they're going to jack it up to 12. 13, 14, 15%. So they're laughing. They're like, hey, this is great. I have this crazy rate of return. But who's going to pay that crazy rate of return? The people that are going to pay that crazy rate of return is a high-risk individual. It's a high-risk deal. And if you don't know how to structure that deal properly as a private lender, you will get slaughtered. You will lose your shirt on it.
Good advice, Terry.
So you have to be really, really careful and speak to people that know how to structure these deals.
And would you give that same advice for people who want to go in joint ventures? Let's say I have money for the down payment, but I don't want to manage.
Yeah.
And I partner up with somebody who has management potential.
Yeah.
And we partner up and buy a building together. Would you give that same advice to be careful?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. You have to be in real estate. I'm happier sometimes for the deals that I don't do than the deals that I actually do. Okay? Remember that. Sometimes it's better to walk away from a deal than not actually do it.
Well, just like Warren Buffett says, he says, I say out of every 100 opportunities that are presented to me, I say 99 times no. And exactly. It's not because he's a no kind of guy. It's just because he's careful and he chooses carefully the opportunities that come his way. Now, with respect to somebody who's a first-time investor, what are some little tips we can give them before we end the show?
So you got to make a plan, and you got to build your proper team around you. Okay, so what is your plan? What do you want to do? What do you want to acquire? Okay, make a plan. Set some goals, if you will. Once you have a goal in mind, you could create a roadmap towards the attainment of that goal. Know the market, and if you don't have time to know the market, get a team around you again. And I repeat the team a second time. Get a team around you that's competent enough to advise you properly. Whether it's having the right accountant, the right real estate broker, the right mortgage broker, the right banker, I don't care. And always remember, people have a conflict of interest generally when they advise you. So if you have $100,000 that's sitting in your financial advisor's portfolio, and you tell him, I want to take this money out because I want to buy real estate, what's he going to say? Oh, real estate, it's terrible, it's horrendous, it's this, it's that. Because now he's not going to collect his trailers anymore. So look at the conflict of interest before you make a final decision.
And sometimes the conflict could even come from family members.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Friends and family can sometimes.
Yeah. So friends and family are wonderful. They're great. But unfortunately, friends and family want to protect you. Yeah. And 90% of the time they talk out of fear. And I can have a whole show talking about how I should have gone bigger, but because I listened to the wrong people, I actually didn't. We're out of real estate, Merav.
Yes.
If people want to get a hold of us,
you can reach us at the office at 514-680-4674 or online at nordest.ca.
And of course, if you haven't done so already, please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is newsonthego.ca. Till next week, everyone, have a blessed week. Love you all.
You're listening to The Real Estate Show with your real estate and mortgaging team, Terry Kilakos and Merav Marciano on CJAD 800.